Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In the vast Chicago courtroom, the air was thick with tension. Murmurs mingled with the whispers of the lawyers, but at the center of it all, a black man stood straight and impassive. Marcus Reynolds, a respected lawyer and civil rights advocate, was about to face a judge and a prosecutor who thought they could belittle him simply because of the color of his skin. Judge Howard Bennett, a man known for his arrogance, cast a condescending glance at Marcus, a mocking smile playing on his lips. Beside him, prosecutor Philip Carlson prepared his briefs, convinced he was about to humiliate Marcus in front of the entire courtroom. "Let's see if this Mr. Reynolds truly understands boundaries," Carlson murmured disdainfully. But what they didn't know was that Marcus wasn't just a talented lawyer. Behind his calm exterior lay a strategic, patient mind, capable of turning any affront into an instant lesson in karma. Every detail of their arrogance would be observed, recorded, and used. The courtroom was packed. The jurors, the public, the journalists, everyone was waiting for the trial, unaware that this moment would go viral far beyond the courtroom walls. Marcus sat down, placed his file on the table, and clasped his hands, a subtle smile playing on his lips. This smile wasn't one of fear or anxiety. It was the certainty that karma, that invisible justice sometimes thought to be slow, would strike faster than they could have imagined. The judge banged his gavel, announcing the start of the trial. Bennett and Carlson's condescending glances seemed to want to pierce Marcus, but they didn't know that the true judgment would come not only from human laws, but from life itself. The courtroom buzzed with almost palpable tension. Marcus Reynolds calmly observed his opponents, knowing that every gesture, every word could be used against them. Judge Howard Bennett, haughty and self-assured, banged his gavel again to demand silence, a smug smile stretched across his face. Prosecutor Philip Carlson stood up, his file in hand. "Mr. Reynolds, you know very well that this court does not tolerate idle chatter. I hope you are ready to answer for your actions," he said, his tone thick with contempt. Marcus did not respond immediately. He simply smiled slightly, meeting Carlson's gaze. "I am here to defend justice, Mr. Carlson. Not to be subjected to your hasty judgments," he replied calmly, his clear voice echoing throughout the room. Judge Bennett rolled his eyes, as if Marcus's words were a personal insult. "We shall see if your confidence in yourself is justified, Mr. Reynolds." Carlson began to present his arguments, seeking to publicly humiliate Marcus. He brought up past cases, alleged errors, and tried to insinuate that Marcus had lacked professionalism. With each accusation, Marcus remained unperturbed, mentally noting every contradiction, every flaw in the prosecutor's argument. But the real moment of tension came when a key witness was called. Jessica Harper, the court clerk, was expected to confirm certain details of the case. Carlson, confident in his strategy, launched a leading question, thinking Marcus would be caught off guard. Marcus smiled inwardly. He knew the witness had already been briefed on how the trial could be manipulated. And as soon as she began to speak, every word Carlson said was turned against him. His questions fell on deaf ears, his insinuations became proof of his arrogance and unprofessionalism. The murmur in the room shifted. Skeptical glances turned toward Carlson and Bennett. Marcus, impassive, watched their faces crumble, their arrogance melting under the weight of the facts. Karma, until then silent, was beginning to strike. When the judge banged his gavel again to call for calm, it was clear the tide had turned. Carlson and Bennett, who thought they could humiliate Marcus, were themselves about to receive a lesson they would never forget. The courtroom, once dominated by the arrogance of Judge Bennett and Prosecutor Carlson, was now permeated by an unusual tension. Every whisper seemed to charge the air with an invisible energy, and Marcus Reynolds, sitting calmly, observed the scene with an almost supernatural composure. As Carlson tried to regain control of the trial, he asked the witness a seemingly innocent question, thinking it would put Marcus on the spot. But the witness, perfectly prepared, answered with precision and clarity. Every word she uttered exposed not only the prosecutor's ignorance but also his lack of ethics. "Mr. Carlson, are you certain of your dates and facts?" because the file indicates the opposite. The witness asked in a polite but firm tone. Carlson felt a shiver of unease run down his spine. The entire courtroom held its breath. Even Judge Bennett, usually impassive, frowned. Marcus rose slowly, his voice echoing like a preemptive verdict. Your Honor, it seems that the truth is shedding light on errors we cannot ignore. This tribunal deserves a fair trial, not a display of arrogance. Judge Bennett tried to regain his authority, but his gavel seemed to strike the air more than anything else. Every time he spoke, his words were immediately contradicted by tangible evidence and solid testimony. The public began to murmur, some even discreetly taking notes on the errors of the judge and the prosecutor. The real turning point came when the witness presented a key document, a file Carlson had thought he could hide. All eyes turned to him and Judge Bennett in disbelief. The evidence was undeniable. Arrogance and attempted manipulation crumbled under the weight of the truth. Carlson, red with shame, realized too late that every attempt to humiliate Marcus Reynolds was backfiring. The judge, usually so sure of his power, was watching his reputation crumble before everyone's eyes. Karma, invisible but relentless, had begun to strike exactly where they least expected it. Marcus, still calm, folded his hands on the table. His discreet smile showed that he had not only won a legal battle, he had just demonstrated that justice, when guided by ethics and patience, always triumphs in the end. The courtroom had become the stage for a dramatic turn of events that no one would have thought possible. Every word spoken by Marcus Reynolds seemed to strike directly at the misplaced pride of Judge Bennett and Prosecutor Carlson. Their attempts at intimidation crumbled like houses of cards, under the watchful gaze of the public. Carlson attempted one last maneuver, hoping to discredit Marcus with a technical objection. But just as he rose, a crucial document that Marcus had discreetly provided to the court clerk was presented. The judge read the document, and his face paled. The facts were irrefutable. Carlson had manipulated evidence and attempted to mislead the court. Mr. Carlson, Bennett began, his voice trembling despite himself. But he already knew the situation was slipping out of his control. The courtroom murmured, captivated by this unexpected turn of events. Every act of arrogance by the two men was backfiring with almost divine precision. The audience could barely contain their astonishment when Marcus, standing, calmly and methodically laid out each error and each attempt at humiliation. This court deserves the truth, and the truth does not depend on power or ego. It depends on the courage to speak the truth. Today, we have the chance to right what could have been distorted. At that precise moment, Judge Bennett felt the weight of his own arrogance crash down upon his conscience. The jurors exchanged puzzled glances, some nodding in silent approval of Marcus. Carlson, meanwhile, was desperately trying to salvage the situation, but every word he uttered condemned him a little more. Karma, until then silent, manifested itself fully. Bennett had to admit that his bias had nearly compromised justice, and Carlson was formally reprimanded for his manipulation of evidence. The entire courtroom held its breath as Marcus, calmly and with dignity, concluded, "Justice is not a matter of color or status. It is universal, and it always triumphs over injustice." The silence that followed was heavy with respect and astonishment. The two men, publicly humiliated, finally realized the extent of their arrogance and their mistake. Marcus sat down again, unperturbed, his discreet smile showing that he had not only won the case, but had also left an indelible lesson: no one can escape karma. The tension in the courtroom had reached its peak. Judge Bennett, red with shame and frustration, was now avoiding the gaze of the jury and the public. Prosecutor Carlson, his shoulders slumped, felt the weight of the impending official reprimand. Marcus Reynolds, however, remained standing, calm and in control of the situation. The judge banged his gavel to regain a semblance of authority, but his voice trembled. I acknowledge that I was influenced by hasty judgments, and that arrogance nearly compromised justice. A murmur of astonishment rippled through the room. No one had expected such an admission. The jurors straightened, the audience held its breath, and Marcus, with a simple, discreet smile, let the force of truth speak. Carlson attempted to plead his case, but every argument was countered by the facts and irrefutable evidence that Marcus had methodically presented. The punishment was immediate. Carlson was formally reprimanded, and his reputation as a respected prosecutor was severely damaged. Judge Bennett, for his part, received a stern warning and was forced to publicly apologize for his biased and condescending behavior. The audience quietly applauded Marcus, not only for his legal victory, but for his patience and his ability to transform the humiliation intended for him into a triumph of justice. Every word spoken in the room resonated as a reminder that truth and integrity are stronger than arrogance and discrimination. As he left the courtroom, Marcus felt a profound sense of satisfaction. This wasn't just a personal victory, but a powerful message: no one can escape karma, and every unjust act will eventually catch up with them. Carlson and Bennett, once arrogant and confident in their power, were now facing the consequences of their actions, right before everyone's eyes. The sun was setting over Chicago, and for Marcus, every ray of light seemed to celebrate triumphant justice. In this battle against injustice, he had demonstrated that courage, ethics, and patience could transform the humiliation imposed by hatred into a lesson that would be remembered by all.